Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the podcast you come to when you're finally ready to take fantasy hockey seriously. My name is Nibbelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. In this podcast, I'm going to break down the most puzzling players league-wide as determined by the Apples and Ginos Discord server. Let's get it. Welcome on in, everyone. We are here to talk some fantasy hockey on this fine Monday evening. We have the Rangers getting to biz. Alexis Lafreniere's got a couple of points. Vladislav Gavrikov has a couple of points. Vincent Trocheck returned to the lineup, a couple of points. Artemi Panarin has a goal. JT Miller still shut out, which is wild. But yeah, things are happening. I mean, they are playing the Predators, so that can happen when you're playing the Predators, but things are happening for the Rangers, and we can be happy about that. If we've got some Rangers on our teams, we can allow it. Let's get into some comments. PB Stars is in here. Nice to see you. Sorry for the early ask. Didn't see Kaprizov listed in the Discord. Concerned about his last 5 games. Underlying metrics. And we've got some other friends saying hi as well. Hello to you. Let's talk about Kaprizov for a second. Let's get him in the sheet and see what those last 5 games are looking like. Kaprizov, 6 points in his last 5, over 21 minutes a night, but 180th in shots per 60, 222nd in individual expected goals for per 60, 205th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. He's on pace for 48 goals and 106 points, so it's kind of hard to be too upset about what Kaprizov is bringing to the table at the moment. But yeah, the underlying stats, not so hot at the moment. I tend to be not concerned about the top-end talents unless they give us bigger reasons to be concerned. Like, he's still scoring points at a pretty good clip, and if that starts to go away and the underlying numbers are looking bad, then I'm going to be more concerned. But when he's scoring the points, sometimes, I haven't checked the Wild's latest games, but if they get ahead sometimes, you'll see teams play a little bit back, and so he might not be on his toes as much, might not be generating as many shots if he's scoring early in the game and then, kind of sitting back a little bit more. So that can sometimes be the case for some teams. Some players on those teams that are doing well earlier in games and then kind of sitting back, and you'll see their underlying stats just kind of, just be a little bit undersold, let's say, versus where they have been in the past. And so it can be easy to look at that and think, hey, they should be, he's got some bad underlying stats here, maybe it's all going to go away and he's going to crash and burn. That can be more valid in my experience for some teams that are some teams and players that we don't have the same kind of the same kind of belief in, I guess. But Kaprizov is a guy that I definitely have a lot of belief in. I think we've seen how good he can be over the course of the last few years, so I don't personally have any concerns about Kaprizov at the moment. Zuccarello coming back, give them a minute to work out that chemistry and to get that going on a game-to-game and week-to-week basis, and I think you'll see everything going just fine there. They get the Sharks this week, then the Ducks. Those are going to be some high-scoring games, I would anticipate, so it could be a look here for Kaprizov where he actually starts to pop off in the next few games, and we won't be too worried about it. Bravest Face was in here first, actually, with the Mercer request, so we can do that while we're at it. Dawson Mercer has been getting some run with the New Jersey Devils. They are playing currently, and I don't believe, it's Meyer still on the top power play. Meyer, Hischier, Bratt, Hughes, and Luke Hughes on the back end with Dougie Hamilton out. But Dawson Mercer still has 4 goals, 6 points in his last 5, almost 19 minutes a night, 171 shots per 60, 187 individual expected goals for per 60, 275 on ice expected goals for per 60. Is still playing on that second line with Meyer and Hischier at even strength, and he's one of their big-time penalty killers. He's on a point per game pace on the season, but the underlying numbers are not really any better than they were a year ago. He's shooting almost 30% with a 17.5% on ice shooting percentage. I think it's pretty fair to say that this is mostly a mirage from Dawson Mercer. Could he have the best season of his career so far? Definitely. That would probably still only need to be like 50 points. I don't know what his best season is actually, but he has never really been a big time offensive performer. He's had like stretches where the underlyings seem to come up and you start to get a little bit excited, but then it always seems to just kind of go right back down. Still only 24 years old. I don't want to, completely write off the player at 24 years old. But yeah, he had that 156-point season. That's right. That 156-point season, and then followed it up with 33 and 36, despite getting more ice time and even more this year. Yeah, I think, the best case scenario is that 56-point season again in my mind for Dawson Mercer. And if he's not on the top power play, I'm not that excited. I think he's just in streamable territory at that point. Swoosh is in here. Could you analyze Kyrou and Thomas, please? We can throw in Kyrou and Thomas. Let's do that now. Jordan Kyrou. If I can spell, that would be helpful. Jordan Kyrou. And Rob Thomas, he's only been back for a couple of games here, but we can get him in and see what we've got. Kyrou's underlying still look pretty good. 46 shots per 60, 29th individual expected goals for per 60, 32nd on ice expected goals for per 60. All that looks pretty good for Kyrou. Whereas Rob Thomas, not so good. 167 shots per 60, 165 individual expected goals for per 60, and 203rd in on ice expected goals for per 60. This last game, they're actually playing on a line together. Kyrou, Thomas, Shen. And not sure, no, not on the same power play unit. So the Rob Thomas unit was still the first unit, getting more of the ice time, and Kyrou was on the second unit. So all that to say, actually I should say we did get updated practice lines today, and it's Buchnevich, Thomas, Snuggerud, and then Holloway, Dvorsky, Kyrou as what looks like a second unit or a second line. They also have Braden Shen, Pia Suter, and Matthew Joseph as another line there in the middle six. So, I mean, the thing is, I think Kyrou's really good at hockey. I think he's quite good at fantasy hockey, especially. He scores, he shoots, he does the things we want, right? So I want to hang on to Kyrou. I don't think it should be this bad. Like, he's still on a 27-goal pace, 49-point pace, which is not ideal, but 27-goal pace after all of this. So it's not like the talent's gone away or anything. It really just does seem to be he's the whipping boy right now, and he has been in the past, and maybe there's something about the player that coaches just don't like. Maybe he is just, I don't know, maybe he is a real dink in the dressing room. Who knows? We're not in that dressing room. We don't really know. But in the end of the day, for fantasy purposes, I'm still into what Jordan Kyrou brings. I don't think dropping him in most spots is the right option. Maybe in a 10-team league, like a less competitive 10-team league where a lot of good players are on the wire all the time, maybe you could convince me in some specialized circumstances. But for the most part, I think Jordan Kyrou should be rostered and should be a player who gets back to 30 to 35 goals, 65 to 70-point pace at some point throughout the year. Yeah, it's been a tough start, but he should be better. I'd say the same for Thomas. I think a fair bit of this is, like, they were so good last year. Thomas has some of the weirdest underlying stats on the year so far. 19.3% on ice shooting percentage, but only getting in on 53% of those is 53% IPP. Just wild how little he's been involved in those. So that is kind of weird for Rob Thomas. Whereas Kyrou is kind of the opposite, 75% IPPs, which is normal for Kyrou, who usually is up around that 75% mark, but 8.9% on ice shooting and 13.9% individual shooting, which should actually be better for Kyrou based on his historical numbers. So overall, I'm not too worried about either of these players. Rob Thomas, his underlying stats are more concerning, but Kyrou's deployment is more concerning. So you can take that all into account, and maybe you knock them down a little bit from where we had them in the preseason. But overall, I think both of these guys are going to be players that are going to be good for fantasy throughout the course of the year. It's a tough hold right now, maybe, but overall, I think these are guys that you have to hang on to. Eric B says Vinny Tro, not only a friend of the show, but the solution to all the team's offensive woes. Very well could be. I mean, it is hard to overstate the impact that losing your top center can have to your lineup. I mean, I guess you can argue JT Miller's a top center, but basically the center that plays with Panarin more often than not. I assume that's what they're doing tonight. I haven't actually checked the lines, but Trocheck, Panarin, Lafreniere has been the line. So I think that Vinny Tro can really be a force that really kind of is the missing piece to a lot of their offensive woes. We haven't had a power play there, so I'm interested to see what goes on there. That will definitely matter for fantasy, obviously. I wouldn't be surprised if Trocheck gets right back out there because they want him to be a part of the galvanizing force behind the power play as well as the even strength offense. So let's see what's going on there, but I would be surprised if Trocheck doesn't get some good power play run and if things don't start to turn around sooner rather than later for the Rangers in general. Michael asked for Lucas Raymond. We could take a quick look at some Lucas Raymond for sure. 2 goals, 4 points his last 5, almost 19 minutes average time on ice, 60th shots per 60, 30th individual expected goals for per 60, and 9th in on ice expected goals for per 60. He's on a 23 goal, 76 point pace. Honestly, this feels like exactly what I expected from Lucas Raymond. He's actually shooting a bit more and being a bit more dangerous individually right now than he has been on the course of the season. So the last 5 games has actually been a better sample size in terms of the underlying numbers, just not converting as much as he was earlier. It's all going to even out, and I think he should be in the 75 to 80 point range when all is said and done. Another question. Hey, Nate, thoughts on Marchessault in a 12-team Banger Cats League? Is he a drop? Also have Holloway. Can get Barbashev. Thoughts? In that case, I think I would go for Barbashev right now. I'd try to stay in the Flames. Vegas has a good schedule this week. They are playing tonight, and then they also play Thursday, Saturday, Sunday at the end of the week. So if you can get him in on that Thursday, probably not on that super heavy Saturday, but then again on Sunday, that would be a good spot to grab some Barbashev, in my opinion. If you can't get Barbashev in on the Thursday, then you're getting an extra game out of Marchessault, and then I might start to consider it. But more often than not, I think I'm going Barbashev in this case, just to try to stay in the Flames with Barbashev and what he's doing currently. Another question. Hey, Nate, saw the Week 6 show and the discussion around Harley. Would you take Vince Dunn over him in a Cats League? Goals, assists, power play points, shots on goal, and hits. Shea Theodore also on the wire. That is an interesting question. Theodore is on the top power play right now and will be until Mark Stone comes back. And that theoretically should be a good place for him to be. I'm struggling with this one a little bit. They are all somewhat similar. I think I would put Vince Dunn below Harley and Theodore for myself. I just think Seattle is struggling to score goals and will probably struggle to score goals for the duration of the season. So while I think Dunn is roughly in that category as an offensive talent from the blue line, I think the team environment is much worse for him than it is for Harley and Shea Theodore. I think Theodore might be the best player for, this week. As I mentioned with Barbashev, the 4-game week this week. If you can fit him in for all 4 games, then you're really enjoying what you get out of Theodore. Hopefully this week should be a little bit better in terms of actually getting some offense on the board sooner rather than later for him. And then Harley, I think Harley might have the greatest upside of all those guys, but Heiskanen is not showing any signs of relinquishing that top power play at the moment. And so in the immediate term, I would say Theodore. Over the course of the season, it's much harder to say conclusively whether I would go Theodore or Harley, but power play points, I think Theodore is going to have more power play points at the end of the year at this point in time. So I think I might go Theodore there. That being said, he also doesn't hit whatsoever, so there is that to consider. Theodore, final answer, but it is very, very close. Last one says, good evening, sir. Don't let Panarin get hot. I wouldn't mind it if he did. Steve Larini, make sure you all like and subscribe. Thank you. Yes, if you are here live on YouTube and you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, that does really help us out. Is Nyes a sell high? Traded him for Panarin a while back. Smash. Probably depends on the league. Nyes is obviously a bit unique in what he can bring in terms of the hits. So in a a perfect scenario if Knies is able to keep up what he's done in the early season, and if Panarin is a little less than maybe we thought at the beginning of the season, then I could see a scenario in which Knies is better in some leagues at the end of the year, some Bangers Cats leagues or leagues with big hits weight. So there are scenarios in which Knies outperforms Panarin, but in kind of a more standard point setup, I think I would be taking Panarin still. Would you consider selling high on Bedard? If so, what could be some reasonable targets? I think I would always consider selling high on anyone, but I think you're going to have to get somebody really high end. I'm trying to think like players who are going in the early second round, like can you trade him for a Zach Werenski or something like that to turn him into a defenseman? Yeah, no, maybe there's something like that you could get done, and I wouldn't be too mad about that. But in terms of like a 1-for-1, I struggle to see how that's going to help you. Chicago has a lot of off nights this year as well. I am not like in the business of trying to make 1-for-1 trades with really high end players. So most often I'm not trying to do that unless, if you have a really big hole on defense and you're flush with forwards and you're actually benching good forwards on some nights, then yeah, that might be a spot where you actually do want to move on from Bedard and try to get a defenseman for him, a really high-end defenseman. So maybe I could see that, but that would probably be the only case. Hey, Nate, was offered Panarin and Point for Rantanen, Bangers, Cats. Thoughts? So Panarin and Point, obviously not much going on in terms of the banger Cats there. I mean, Rantanen's not exactly a banger himself, but at least he's not a net nothing. I think that this really comes down to how deep your team is. Do you still have like a streamer spot after you make this move? I think that Rantanen at this point, based on what we've seen so far, you would expect to be the best player in this deal. But if you're really upgrading the back end of your lineup, like if this is in, say, like a 16-team league or something, then it might actually be a pretty big deal to get that value over replacement at 2 positions rather than just 1. Whereas if this is a shallower league, then I might just want to take the best player every single time in Rantanen. Hey, just tuning in. Have you talked about Verhaeghe lately? Curious for the metrics and your thoughts rest of season. We could talk about Carter Verhaeghe. No problem. We have talked about him a fair bit. Obviously, he hasn't had the greatest start to the season. Only 2 goals and 7 points in 15 games, 38-point pace. 3 assists in his last 5, 19 minutes a night, 193rd shots per 60, 192 individual expected goals for per 60, not where he usually lives. 104th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. I really am struggling to understand why Paul Maurice doesn't want him on the top power play every single game. They've been messing with this power play so much. In the last game against the Sharks, it was Verhaeghe on the top power play, so that's nice. He's also playing with Sam Reinhart at even strength, but it's Evan Rodriguez down the middle, and so yeah, Florida's hurting in terms of what they're putting out there every single night, and they are changing things a lot as a result. I think that's a tough place to be. It's a tough place to get anything consistent, basically, at this point. So I want to say that it's going to get better for Verhaeghe based on what we've seen in the past, but it strikes me that he might need to get some more consistent center play, and I don't know that he's going to get it with Sam Bennett not having a great year. Anton Lundell, if he could play with Verhaeghe all the time, would probably make that work, but they've been running this Marchand, Luostarinen, Lundell line that was so good for them last year. I don't know, at the end of the day. I think he gets better from this 38-point pace for sure. Do I think that he turns back into this 65-point player rest of season? I can't say that for sure. So I think he is into streamer territory most likely at this point for me. Thoughts on Bobrovsky and Skinner? I mean, it's really hard to trust Skinner. It's really hard to trust anything in Edmonton right now. They have Connor Ingram down there, hopefully getting right down in the AHL. At what point do they turn to him? It feels like it could be soon after that massive 9-1 loss against Colorado. Yeah, I'm very worried about Skinner. Obviously, everybody is, including everybody in Edmonton at this point in time. Bobrovsky, less worried about. I don't think Tarasov is stealing that net anytime soon, but obviously Florida is not as good of a team as they have been in years past at this moment in time. And so, yeah, you have to knock down what you expected from Bobrovsky by a fair amount based on the fact that they just aren't winning as many games. They're not dictating the pace of play to as many teams this year as they were in years past. This can wait till you talk about JT Miller. Got offered Point and JT Miller from Tage, Jeek, and Cooley. Is Miller and Point high-end talent you don't worry about bouncing back like Kaprizov? Interesting question. Point and JT Miller for Tage Thompson, Joel Eriksson and Will Cooley. Probably matters the, like, JT Miller obviously better in Cats. Jeek also very good in Cats. Banger Cats specifically. Cooley also very good in Banger Cats for all the hits. He's been hitting even more this year. I think that in the end, man, that is tough because I think that Tage might be the best player in this deal in a fair number of leagues, but it is close. I think I would take Point and Miller, but I wouldn't feel good about it. Yeah, I don't feel good about it. In the end, if I don't feel good about it, I'm probably not making the deal. If I had to just tell you my best guess on what happens, I do think Point and Miller probably outproduce those other guys in terms of what they'll bring to your fantasy lineup. But is it by enough that I'm confident enough to make this deal right now? That's the bigger question. And I can't say that I am. And so, yeah, I think that's probably where I land. I think that theoretically Point and Miller should be better than those guys rest of the season, but it's really hard to be super confident in that right now based on what we're getting out of Point and Miller. Maybe in another week it looks like an absolute smash. Just at the moment it is a little bit tough. I think I would talk myself into it. I think I would, but it doesn't feel good, that's for sure. Steezy, can we take a peek at Kindell? We absolutely can take a look at Benjamin Ben Kindell. Kindell? I actually don't know how to say it. I should probably look that up. 2 goals, 4 points since last 5, 19 minutes a night, 98th shots per 60, 93rd individual scoring chances for, or individual expected goals for per 60 rather, and 54th in on ice expected goals for per 60. Obviously, this has a lot to do with getting a lot more Crosby exposure as of late on the top line, on the top power play. That's the place you got to be if you're going to do anything in Pittsburgh. I mean, I guess unless you're Justin Brazeau or Anthony Mantha or Evgeny Malkin. But yeah, definitely a good spot for Kindell to apply his trade. I think that he's a good player. I think end of this week, Pittsburgh has the Friday-Sunday off nights. You could definitely get into him there and see how he performs, see if he stays on that top spot on the top line and top power play. If he's staying there, I'm willing to stick with Kindell on a team as long as he's staying line 1, power play 1 with Crosby. Armin, should I trade McTavish for Dobson? Have 3-4D. Cats include hits and plus-minus, but no blocks. Yeah, I would take Dobson there. What do you think of Dougie and Zibanejad for Leo Carlsson? League settings, Dougie is 2.2. Injured, Zibanejad is 2.0. Carlsson 3.3. I would take Carlsson there pretty easily. Is Donato a dud? It does look that way. Duchesne, Bennett, KJ dropped in Kakafalani must-adds. Duchesne, I'd be pretty interested in. I think he's going to have a bigger role when he gets back. They need his play driving and zone entry offense. Would you trade JT Miller for J. Rob in a Cats Bangers League? Bangers Cats League, that does become more of a question. I probably want J-Rob there just because I think he's more bankable at this point. But in Bangers Cats, JT Miller's going to have that utility. So it's definitely a bigger question. I guess it might depend on if I need JT Miller's hits versus J-Rob's shots. That could probably be the point that would sway me in one direction or another. Fantilli finally playing with Marchenko, assuming this holds. Cousins versus Fantilli, Cats Bangers League. If it holds, then definitely Fantilli over Cousins. Cousins has not been very good as of late in any metric. And yeah, we saw what Fantilli could do. He is still on that line in the warm-ups in Edmonton. We got that tweet out, so it looks like we're going to get another game of Fantilli on that top line. So maybe it sticks at this point, maybe it doesn't, but you're holding Fantilli until he's off. All right, we made it through a bunch of comments. We are now ready to dig in. The number one most requested player in the Apples and Ginos Discord server this week was Dylan Gunther. 1 goal only in his last 5 games. Just over 17 minutes average time on ice, 114 shots per 60, 118 individual expected goals for per 60, 92nd on ice expected goals for per 60, and demoted off the top power play, which is not something I saw coming at any point this year. But, I mean, it's a spot where that power play has gone 0 of 12. This was a tweet from Cole Bagley on November 8th, so I can't honestly remember if they got any power play goals on the weekend, but it's a tough thing. Coaches feel like they have to make moves. They can't just let the players figure them out sometimes. I mean, it's hard to envision Gunther staying off that top power play for any length of time, but we did see it last year with Logan Cooley where he was ripping it up from power play 2 and they just kind of left him there. So that's a real possibility for Dylan Gunther for some length of time this year, and that's concerning for sure. That being said, like, what are you going to do with Gunther? Are you going to sell low on him here? Like, that's not really an option to me. He's still on a 31-goal, 67-point pace on the season at this point in time. He's still playing with Peterka. They moved, actually, Cooley to the top line with Keller and Schmaltz and Hayton between Gunther and Peterka. Either way, I still think there's not really anything to do with Gunther here. It's just that, yeah, it doesn't look as good right now as it has in weeks past. I think that it'll turn around. The question is, how long will it take, obviously, for that to turn around? They play Buffalo and the New York Islanders this week. That should be theoretically a decent spot to get some offense going again. So let's talk about it in a week from now and see how we feel at that point. JT Miller's next up here, goal and assist, 2 points in his last 5 games. I think that even with the Rangers scoring 5 goals, JT Miller, still pointless in this game that's currently ongoing. Tough spot to be for the Rangers captain. Still skating 21 minutes a night. He's 29th in shots per 60, 7th individual expected goals for per 60, 10th on ice expected goals for per 60. This absolutely should turn around for JT Miller, and soon. It's kind of crazy how unbelievably unlucky he's been to this point, and he's actually shooting even more than he has in years past. So I do think JT Miller is a pretty big buy low at this point in time. I think Blake was absolutely right to call him out as such. That's 7.5% on ice shooting percentage, 6.8% shooting percentage, individual shooting percentage, that is 57% IPP. All of those numbers are going to go way up. They absolutely have to. So JT Miller, I think, is a pretty big buy low at this point in time, but yeah, it doesn't feel good if you're rostering him currently. Seth Jones, 1 assist in his last 5. We talked about Seth Jones in the flagship show that came out today, so go back and check that out. Basically, I think Seth Jones is in such a good spot in terms of 24-plus minutes a night. The on-ice stats still look really good. He is kind of the problem there. He's not doing a whole lot himself individually, which is really concerning, obviously, but it's such a good spot that until he's off that top power play, I'm really not moving away from him. Nico Hischier was another player we talked about in that show, so go check that out for my take on Hischier. I'm concerned about Hischier. The underlying stats are really bad here, and they've been fairly bad for most of the season at this point, and even worse in this last 5-game stretch, 383rd shots per 60, 367 individual expected goals for per 60. So I am officially concerned about Nico Hischier. That being said, I'm not like selling low on him at this point. Yeah, if I can get equivalent value from where I drafted him back, then sure, I would do that, but I don't think you're getting that anywhere out on the open market. So yeah, I don't know, maybe you can convince somebody, you can add something to Hischier to get JT Miller. If you can get that done, then more power to you. I just don't see what realistic deal is out there for you to trade a slumping Nico Hischier for something of greater value. Jackson Lacombe, I've talked about a ton, 3 assists his last 5. We talked about him as well on the flagship show. and I have no concerns about Jackson Lacombe. Looks the part, skating 25 plus minutes a night. He's got in on very little offense this year, which is probably mostly bad luck. Could also be a little bit of function of the Anaheim offense running much more through their forwards than their defense, as it did last year, whatever offense there was last year. But the offensive environment is obviously so much better this year that it should come out in the wash, and it should be a net positive for Lacombe in the end. So I'm patiently waiting. I fully believe that this thing is going to turn around a big way for Lacombe, and he's going to have a 50-plus point season when all is said and done. Andrei Svechnikov, 2 goals, 4 points in his last 5. About 16:45 average time on ice. He's 23rd in shots per 60, 40th in individual expected goals for per 60, 81st on ice expected goals for per 60 over the last 5 games here. More importantly, he's gotten on the top line with Aho and Jarvis and the top power play. And, I mean, as long as he's there, I'm into it. The problem is, you can't trust this, right? We've seen this movie so many times before. He goes on these hot streaks. You see the flashes of the talent, and you think, finally, Svechnikov is breaking out, and he's going to stay there forever. I can't trust it anymore. How can anyone trust it at this point in time? So that's where I'm at with Svechnikov. Yeah, I'll roster him. Absolutely, I'll roster him while he's hot, while he's on line 1, power play 1. But I fully expect that, at some point in December or January or whenever it is, he'll be back on the 3rd line, 4th line again and off the top power play, and he'll be drop-worthy again at that point. Nazem Kadri, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5 games. Still 19-plus minutes every single night. 72nd in shots per 60, but 236th in individual expected goals for per 60 and 277th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. This is just, the Flames are a train wreck right now. He's playing with Sharangovich and Farabee at even strength. That's not working. Nothing is really working. The top line now of Frost, Coronado, Huberdeau actually did get some positive results against the Wild there for the Flames. So that's probably not good for Kadri because he's not going to get exposure to those players, which would probably be better for him. He is still top power play, still getting 19 minutes a night. I'm not moving away from Kadri, but yeah, this looks like it's going to be one of the worst offensive environments in the league this year. And probably by a fair margin compared to even the average teams in the league. So right now he's on a 19-goal, 53-point pace. I think he can do a little bit better than that, but I would definitely be marking him down from, I think I had him for 70 points at the beginning of the year, so I'd definitely be marking him down from that point if I was redoing my projections as of today. Matt Barzal was heavily requested as well. 1 goal, 4 points in his last 5. 20 minutes a night, 157th in shots per 60, 313th individual expected goals for per 60, 30th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. This has kind of been Barzal's MO for quite a while, just refusing to shoot or go to the net. He just stays on the periphery and makes terrific passes and looks really good, skates really well. 18 goals, 70-point pace for Barzal. Like the player a lot. I think that he should probably finish in this 70 to 80 point range with some plus or minus on that. The on-ice stats still look really good. And honestly, he's doing this with a 57% IPP. So I think he has even more to give here, as the underlying stats are really not, there's nothing, at least in terms of the percentages, there's nothing, the luck metrics, there's nothing glaring there. It actually probably should go more positively for him in the future. So overall, I think Barzal is probably going to be close to a point per game player rest of season. And he's not going to give you a lot of peripherals, not going to shoot, not going to hit, definitely not going to hit. So yeah, you take that into account. But at the end of the day, I think you're probably going to be relatively happy with Barzal on your team. Adam Fantilli and Sean Monahan will kind of do together here. We talked about Fantilli a little bit already, but 3 assists in his last 5, about 16:45 average time on ice, 64 shots per 60, 66th individual expected goals for per 60, 114 on ice expected goals for per 60. If he's going to get this top line deployment, better things are going to happen for him. That's just a guarantee. You get to play with Kirill Marchenko, good things happen. That's how it works. I don't make the rules. But yeah, I think that the bigger question, right, is he going to hang on to it this time? Is this the time in which he fully takes over from Sean Monahan and he just hangs on to top line all year long from this point? I don't think so. I would be pretty surprised. But that being said, he's getting a couple of games here in that spot, so that's showing at least a little bit of something from Evason, that he's willing to let him get a little bit of run here. So if the Blue Jackets have a good game here against the Oilers and get something going, then yeah, I think it could happen, but it could very easily just be Monahan as soon as tomorrow night. Monahan himself, just 2 points in his last 17 minutes average time on ice. I think he left that one game early, so maybe that's a little reduced from where it should be. But he's not shooting. 326 shots per 60, 218th individual expected goals for per 60, 40th on ice expected goals for per 60. So that number's still there for him. It's just been a pretty disappointing season for Monahan so far. 6-goal, 35-point pace. That's coming with some pretty unbelievably low percentages. 37% IPP, 3.5% shooting percentage, 9.6% on ice shooting percentage. Those numbers will come back. But again, he's got to have that top line exposure to Marchenko for him to really count for fantasy. So without Marchenko, I think he's firmly in streamer territory. With Marchenko, I think he's firmly a hold. So he's firmly nothing at this point in time. So we got to see how it goes. I have Monahan in a few spots. The Monday, Tuesday back-to-back to start the week. I'm going to hold him probably after that, even if he's not back on the top line by the end of the game tomorrow, Tuesday. So I think I'm going to wait and see at least that far and see how things go after that, because we saw the proof of concept. Monahan can be very effective alongside Marchenko. A lot of players might be able to be very effective alongside Marchenko. I think he's terrific. But yeah, I'm not ready to just totally give up on Monahan. If it's like a 10-team league, for sure you can give up on Monahan. You're not going to be burned by it too badly, even if he does get back there and start to produce. But it's a good spot for Monahan if he gets back there, and he should be better than he has been. Most of this looks like just really bad percentages. All right, a little bit of water there, and we're back. Let's get back to the comments, actually. These have been piling up. Let's see what we got. Byfield droppable for players like Patty Kane or Zuccarello. They're probably relatively interchangeable, to be honest. I think if I had to rank them I'm thinking of like our APL point settings. If it's something similar to that, I would probably go Kane, then Byfield, then Zuccarello. Zuccarello clearly the third, Kane and Byfield more similar in my mind, so it'd probably be schedule dependent for me between those two. Paul asks, what's going on with Verhaeghe? Is he droppable now in 12-team leagues? Only have 2 bench spots right now. They're occupied by Barbashev and Spencer Knight. And only 2 bench spots is tough. Yeah, I think you can say that he's droppable in a spot like that. 12-team league, but only 2 bench spots. That's not a very deep league. So I think, yeah, he's droppable. He's streamable in that category for you. We talked about him a little bit more earlier on if you want to go back. How do you rank McTavish, Monahan, Nazar, Bennett? I'm going to have to just kind of assume APL settings without any further context. So let's go McTavish, Monahan, Bennett, Nazar. May or may not have just dropped JT Miller for Vinny Trocheck an hour ago. Hopefully nobody else in the league watches this. Wow, that must be a pretty shallow league for you. After talking about Gunther, would you make a 2-player trade with league settings being a keep 3 points league similar to APL? 2-player trade. Yeah, give me some more context. There it is. Yeah, Gunther Batherson for Cooley Robertson. Gunther Batherson for Cooley Robertson. I think Robertson's the best player in that trade, and probably Cooley and Batherson are relatively similar in a points league like that. So yeah, I think I would do it. I'm in a category league. I want to possibly trade Dorofeyev and need points assists. Who do you suggest? It's pretty hard to do these open-ended questions. Realistically, I think you got to know your opponent and know what they think of Dorofeyev. So yeah, I mean, start a little bit on the high end, get a reaction, see how they feel, and then kind of take it from there. But basically, you want to fish around and find the player in your league who's the highest on Dorofeyev moving forward if you're going to try to move off of him. Jeek versus Fantilli. Again, that's going to be super category dependent. Fantilli does hit a bit, so he does give you a little bit of that. I think it's probably Jeek at this point, unless Fantilli hangs on to this. But yeah, that's If you ask me who's going to score more fantasy points this week, I might say Fantilli. If you ask me who's going to score more on the season, I'd say the odds are probably Jeek. Would you be able to look at Peterka, no points in the last 5? Absolutely, we can look at some JJ Peterka. Let's get him up here. 0 points in the last 5, as you mentioned. 60.5 minutes average time on ice. 131st shots per 60, 150. Individual expected goals for per 60, 112 on ice. Expected goals for per 60, 20 goal, 51 point pace on the season. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. We're back. He has a 71% IPP. 10.6% on ice shooting percentage. Yeah, I think he should be a little bit better, but again, this is a player that I was not super high on coming into the season because it didn't look obvious to me that he had a path to top power play or big time minutes with the other wingers that they have here. I had him for 25 goals, 55 points at the beginning of the season, and I wouldn't change my projection based on anything we've seen so far. How do Levshunov and Dobson look under the hood? Could look at that side, do a little side by side between Noah Dobson and Artem Levshunov. Let's put it together here. So Levshunov has 5 assists, no goals in his last 5 games, while Dobson has 6 assists, no goals in his last 5. Levshunov is getting under 17 minutes a night, while Dobson is getting close to 22. Dobson ranks 42nd in shots per 60, 46th in individual expected goals for per 60, 92nd on ice expected goals for per 60. Levshunov 168 shots per 60, 141 individual expected goals for per 60, 32nd on ice expected goals for per 60. The biggest thing that I will say here is Levshunov has a lot of runway here. If he's able to improve his 5v5 play and get some bigger minutes, if he can play alongside Vlasic, for example, just kind of be that top pair guy at some point throughout the season, if he's able to grow and mature into that role, which I think the Blackhawks would definitely welcome. If he's able to do that, then I think his ceiling is potentially higher than Dobson at points throughout the year. But if you're looking for bankable, really solid production on a good team, then I think Dobson is that guy. He's on a 5-goal but 60-point pace on the season is Noah Dobson, and he's a crucial part of this team right now. No, he's not on the top power play, but he's going to get a lot of even strength points. I think I had him projected for just over 50 points if my memory serves. Let's look this up. There's Lane Hudson. There's Noah Dobson. So I had him for 12 goals, 49 points, 190 shots, though, 164 blocks I had him projected for. Like, these are numbers that should play for Noah Dobson in any league. I think I would take Dobson over Levshunov, but I will acknowledge that Levshunov has a lot of runway there in Chicago. If he's able to take advantage of it, he could do better than Dobson on the course of the season. On that Harley versus Theodore versus Dunn question from before, forgot to mention Jones was also on the wire. Take him over those guys? I would not. How should managers who drafted McTavish over Carlson feel? They should feel bad. I mean, yeah, it doesn't feel good at this point, that's for sure. Last one here before we get back to some players. Have Trocheck on IR, waited in case he was going to be a bust. Worth dropping Holloway to activate or Barbashev after tonight's game in a Cats League. Yeah, I would drop Holloway or Barbashev. Maybe Holloway first with Barbashev having a good schedule this week. But yeah, I would drop either to get Trocheck active, especially based on the good results so far here tonight. All right, back to the list we go. John Klingberg, 1 goal, 3 points in his last 5. Over 20.5 minutes average time on ice, 159th shots per 60, 117th individual expected goals for per 60, 45th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. He is on a 16-goal, 41-point pace. I was a little bit surprised, honestly, that he's getting this amount of ice time there in San Jose. I mean, I know they have no defenseman, but still, it's John Klingberg. I didn't think that you would ever get 20 minutes a night anywhere in the league. So, I mean, I can get behind it as a 4th defenseman in some spots. It's not exciting. I don't think he's got like 60-point upside necessarily, but I think there's a real potential for him to just be a kind of run-of-the-mill guy who stays at the bottom of your lineup as long as he's on that top power play. I do think he's the kind of guy that they might try to trade to somebody who needs a power play quarterback. The Leafs would be an obvious candidate once again. See if they want to try that again with Klingberg. He was obviously there before his big injury. So yeah, I think you can roster Klingberg. He's not going to do much hitting, but he's doing a little bit of blocking with that time on ice. So yeah, I think he could do worse than Klingberg at this point in time. He's actually, he's got a hit per game and over a block per game. He's doing a little bit of everything right now. So hats off to John Klingberg. Man, I really massacred his name there. I didn't see it coming necessarily, and I do think there's an expiration date because I do think he's exactly the kind of defenseman who gets moved by a team at the bottom of the standings as we get closer to the trade deadline. But John Klingberg doing stuff at the moment. Can't hate on it. Matt Coronado next up, 2 assists in his last 5. 16.45 average time on ice. He's 9th in shots per 60, 96th in individual expected goals for per 60, 143 in on ice expected goals for per 60. Obviously, that big scratch really hurt his stock in my mind. It's just so hard to roster a player who might be getting scratched at any moment. That being said, Coronado has been shooting the lights out. He had that 11-shot game. He had 11 shots in 19 minutes against Chicago, and then followed that up with 5 shots against Minnesota. So he's doing stuff at the moment, but it's not going in the net. I am willing to roster him. I am not excited about anything that's going on in Calgary right now, but if you're going to roster somebody, it's going to be Kadri, it's going to be Huberdeau, it's going to be Coronado. Cutter Gauthier was requested basically just to talk about how sustainable he might be. 5 goals, 10 points in his last 5 games. Only 17 minutes and 15 seconds average time on ice in those 5 games. 16th shots per 60, 79th individual expected goals for per 60, 63rd on ice expected goals for per 60. He's on a 60-goal, 109-point pace at this point in the season. Obviously, some unsustainable numbers there, but it's not crazy. 71% IPP, 15.9% shooting percentage, 16.7% on ice shooting percentage. The most likely thing to come down there is the on ice shooting percentage. Gauthier, I think, absolutely has point per game potential at this point in the season. Baseline expectation moving forward, 40 to 45 goals and 75-ish points, I think, is where I'd probably estimate him at. If I had to. Obviously, a lot can change over the course of a season, and probably Anaheim as a young team goes through some growing pains at some point as other teams start to get a book on them, start to understand what they're trying to do, and try to develop some strategies to specifically deal with them as a team. I think that will happen a little bit more, and I think it probably will put a bit of a damper on this offensive torrent that they've unleashed on the rest of the league to open the year. But that being said, I just think Cutter Gauthier is a stud. Greatest player in the world. Book it. Let's go. Dylan Holloway, next up, 1 goal, 2 points in his last 5. 17.45 average time on ice. 101st in shots per 60, 152nd individual expected goals for per 60, 187th in on ice expected goals for per 60. It's a tough spot for Dylan Holloway right now. I'm trying to be optimistic, but not on top power play, playing, just on some bad lines too. Like he hasn't got a long run in a lot of good spots. I'm not going to fault anybody for dropping Dylan Holloway if they want to. Part of it is like the Kyrou thing, right? Like, Holloway and Kyrou were just so good together that it's kind of unbelievable that they're just completely unable to do anything this year so far. So reuniting them in this last, we got some new lines, as I mentioned here today. Hopefully, Dalibor Dvorsky, the rookie down the middle, hopefully that works and they can get something going. But I also think that doesn't have the look of a line that you're going to rely on for big time 5v5 minutes. And so that might also be hurt. I want to be in on Dylan Holloway. I really thought that what he put on on tape last year was pretty sustainable for the most part, had some really good underlying numbers there. It just hasn't been able to find his game this year for whatever reason. And maybe a part of that is the issues with Kyrou as his most common line mate last year. But yeah, it's a tough spot. I'm not going to fault anybody for dropping Holloway. I have him in a couple spots and I haven't quite dropped him yet, but I am definitely considering it. Wouldn't fault anybody for doing so. Patrick Kane, only a couple games since coming back from injury, just over 17.5 minutes average time on ice, first in shots per 60. Nice. 24th individual expected goals for per 60, second in on ice expected goals for per 60. Obviously, really small sample size there, so take that with a bit of a grain of salt. That being said, I really like Kane. I still think he can be efficient. I still think that Detroit power play is going to be really good with him on it. I had him for 18 minutes, 15 seconds average time on ice, so he's down a little bit from that here in the early going on the season. Maybe he gets a little bit more as we get into the year, but I had him for 75 points as a base projection there, so knock it down to 70 and call it a day. I still think he's a 70-point player in the league. Tyler Bertuzzi is an interesting one. We did have Lev Shunov on this list, I forgot. So he's there as well. But let's talk about his teammate there, Tyler Bertuzzi. 7 goals, 8 points in his last 5 games. Almost 19 minutes a night, which is not something that he's gotten a lot in years past. 140th in shots per 60, 36th individual expected goals for per 60, and 69th nice in on-ice expected goals for per 60 over the last 5 games. He was also given some run on this Bedard line alongside Burakovsky and Bedard. Obviously, top power play has been a spot for Bertuzzi for the entire season. I mean, I don't think that he's suddenly going to transform into like a 70-point player, but if Bedard is really going to do this thing this year and Bertuzzi's going to be along for the ride, then I think that he could push 60. I don't think that's too crazy, but more likely it's like a 25 to 30 goal, 50 to 55 point pace for Bertuzzi. That's probably the most likely scenario, but he does have some upside outs with Bedard performing at this level. Leo Carlsson was also requested, kind of similar to Cutter Gauthier. Want to know how sustainable this is. Has the exact same stat line, 5 goals, 10 points in his last 5 games, 18.5 minutes average time on ice, 192nd shots per 60, 125th individual expected goals for per 60, 146th on ice expected goals for per 60. He is on a 55-goal, 137-point pace on the season. He has some pretty crazy unsustainable numbers, but he's also on pace for much higher than Gauthier. So rounded out, I still think... I mean, Carlson is the guy, I think, for all intents and purposes now in Anaheim. That's what they want him to be. They want him to be the 1C, the guy who drives the offense. Obviously, Cutter Gauthier drives offense his way from that second line, but Carlson, I think they want to be the kind of linchpin, the center, the franchise center. And I think he's up for the challenge. Like, it's hard to say based on the returns so far that he's not. So I think he's pretty much up for the challenge. And I think that he's probably looking at a point per game season, if I had to guess. With some upside, I think that he could get to 90 points if everything breaks right. I feel comfortable putting him in that 75 point plus 2 point per game season or range for the rest of the season, with some upside still from there. Like I said, I do think that what Anaheim is doing is largely sustainable. I do think some teams will figure it out and they'll be a little less efficient than they have been. So I do think some of that comes back down. But I do think, again, that these guys are actually really good at hockey, and Joel Quenneville is putting them in positions to succeed offensively. Brandt Clarke, no points in his last 5 games. 18 minutes, 24, or just about 18, 15 average time on ice. He's second in shots per 60 still, 10th individual expected goals for per 60, 27th on ice expected goals for per 60. He does stuff when he's out there on the ice, and everybody sees it except for Jim Hiller. I was pretty excited about Brandt Clarke last week when he got a couple of 20-minute games, and we were starting to hope that Jim Hiller had seen the light and was going to start playing him. Immediately after that, he skates 14:20 in the next game, 18:23, then 16:47. I think Brandt Clarke is a stud, and the only person who doesn't realize it across the entire NHL is Jim Hiller. So that's really unfortunate for fantasy purposes. I think he's realistically just a watch list player, or, in a 16-team league, sure, you can roster Brandt Clarke, but until he starts to consistently get more minutes and or get power play time, I don't think you can honestly roster Brandt Clarke week to week. Timo Meier, 1 goal, 2 points in his last 5 games. That's before tonight. He had at least 1 goal here on the power play. Looks like that's still the only goal. So Timo Meier, 17.5 minutes average time on ice, 6th in shots per 60, 20th individual expected goals for per 60. Those are nice numbers. 198th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. Thanks for that, Nico Hischier. I think that Timo Meier's in about as good a spot as he's been in for a while with that top power play. If Nico Hischier could just get himself on track, then I think Timo Meier could actually go on a bit of a run here. With Hischier playing this poorly, it does put a bit of a damper on it, but I mean, this is the best spot for Timo Meier at the moment, being on power play 1. I don't think like you can buy low on him currently, because anybody who drafted Timo Meier was hoping that he'd get on power play 1. Now that he's getting it, they're probably not going to be like, now I'll move off. It's just generally not the way things go. So I doubt that's going to happen, but definitely a good spot for him, and you could send out a feeler for him if you're so inclined. That being said, we all know it could go away as well. Sheldon Keefe has not liked Meier on the top power play for extended stretches, so it could be him off the top power play very soon as well. Last player here, and then we'll get back to some comments to close it out. Alex DeBrincat, 1 goal, 3 points in his last 5, 18 minutes average time on ice. He's 3rd in shots per 60, 18th individual expected goals for per 60, 15th on ice expected goals for per 60. On the season, it's a 20-goal, 77-point pace for DeBrincat. He's 2nd in shots per 60 on the season as well. Really good stuff for Alex DeBrincat. 9.9% on ice shooting percentage, 6.5% individual shooting percentage, and 83% IPP. Having Patrick Kane back should cure a lot of ills for Alex DeBrincat. And I think that, he's really on one at the moment, and pucks haven't been going in. Maybe that's quality of feeds that he's receiving from players not named Patrick Kane, but with Kane back and playing on that line and them renewing their chemistry, I think DeBrincat should be able to sustain a good chunk of what he's got going on here. And I think that, he should be back in this range and be a very valuable part of your fantasy lineups. 35 to 40 goals, 70 to 75 points, definitely in the wheelhouse for Alex DeBrincat this season. All right. Let's get back to some comments to close this thing out. I traded Nazar to get Monahan. Is that a W? It's, I think it's meh, to be honest. It's fine. I would take Monahan there, but I doubt it really changes your fantasy season. Fiala plus Theodore for Panarin is kind of what I was thinking. Probably depends on the league. Fiala's a bit more of a volume shooter, but probably not going to score as many points. I could see it, especially if you need to free up a roster spot. If you've got extra defensemen floating around, you don't need Theodore. You could do it. It's probably a fair trade. I'm sure you talked about this before, but what to do with Binnington? Drop him, probably. I mean, Hofer's stealing starts now. If Hofer continues to outplay him, if Binnington continues to suck, I don't see any way that it's going to immediately turn around for Binnington. Goalies are voodoo, but I just don't think that it's going to immediately turn around to such an extent that you're going to be so sad that you drop Binnington. He's been getting dropped in a lot of my leagues in this past week. I'm trying to trade Nyes. What would be a good return? Players who are better than Nyes. Again, these are the toughest questions to try to answer, is to just pull random names out of a hat in exchange for a player, especially not knowing any league settings. I would just, look up at any of these guys like the JT Millers that are kind of underperforming but have good underlying stats. Those are the kind of players that I'm looking to get. So maybe JT Miller you can get for your Matthew Nyes. Who knows? What I do with Skinner, he's killing my goalie stats. Also got Helly and Will. You should drop Stuart Skinner. That's my opinion. All right. I think we did it. We made it to the end. Thank you, everybody, for being here for another successful Puzzling Players stream. Really enjoy this time we get to spend with each other live and talk about all of the most puzzling players in the league. That is going to be all that I've got for this episode, so hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick and 18 Skaters. Many thanks to Matt Creamer for supplying the music for the podcast. That's it, folks. Much love.